Good. All right. Good morning, everyone. This morning we are going to be doing a couple of things. We're going to be looking at some bill introductions, mostly from members of our committee and Representative Gregoire as well. And then we are going to be taking a look at the statute governing the Human Services Board. And we have an amendment on H218 that we will be reviewing, and then we're doing some more bill introductions. And then we will not be coming back here after the floor because the floor is going to take quite some time today. So we understand from our esteemed clerk of the House. James, I think you know everybody here, so welcome back.
Otter.
Representative McGuire, I think I told you this before, but he specifically chose that seat because that was one of the seats that you sat in. And so apparently, your reputation preceded you, and, we thought that that would be a great place to sit. So
I scared him away.
you scared him away. No, he is out ill today. So welcome to House Human Services. Welcome back, I guess I should say. James served on the committee for a number of years and was a big part of our passing Act 76, our child care statute, and worked on a number of other things. But so we're happy to have you here today. And speaking of child care, that's what this bill's about.
It is. So, get my nerd glasses on. So this is H248, and it's coming from CDD. And I can tell you, just generally speaking, the first section is supplemental child care grants. And there's small changes to the existing emergency financial relief grant program designed to preserve child care capacity. There's no new funding requested. It increases DCF's flexibility to meet intended purposes of the EFR grants, which is emergency financial relief grants. Allows DCF to support programs in process of being licensed. Example of a program impacted by storms 1 week before the opening. So that's where they could not give support to a program that had not yet opened, but it was actually a satellite of a program that was open, but they had no flexibility to be able to help them because they were not already serving kids. And so they want that flexibility. And that was important. So then that was that. So the section 2 changes to come into compliance with new federal rules. And these are not 2025 rules, they're 2024. So it's not like because of the stuff going on now. New rules for the Child Care Development Fund. So like on page 3, lines 9 to 12, the federal government requires that grants and contracts are used for direct child care services as opposed to only through our current child care subsidy payment model. So we subsidize, and they say that we need to also have contracts and grants in there.
Can I ask you a question, James? So I'll ask this of Katie when we review the thing. I was just thinking about it says or providing subsidy issued pursuant to subdivision 2. So that's but I think that's what it is to say.
The way it was described to me doesn't mean it's right.
Yeah.
Is that we have to do both.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean? You can't worry now we just do subsidies. We have to have a component of the others. So where am I at? Yes, this line allows the state to use both models. So then the change that is intended to allow state to better support children with disabilities, infants and toddlers in underserved areas. So that's what that part's about. So on page 4, line 16 to page 5, line 5, these are federal requirements that a child care subsidy payment be paid prospectively. So in advance of services, this change is to make subsidy payments more like payments from private pay families. This change eliminates reimbursement language. So right now we currently pay after services, and the federal government says no, you got to pay it first. So, and then page 5, line 8, that's a federal requirement that payments be made on a child's authorized enrollment. This change aligns the state statute with the federal rule and provides additional clarification on what enrollment is. There had been some confusion in that field that interpreted enrollment as the number of children served. The state did not move to enrollment-based payments per Act 76, or did rather, not did not. But the Vermont's definition is slightly different than the federal rules, and we need to amend those rules by August 2026, but they don't want to wait till the last minute. So they just have to get them into alignment, our definition of enrollment and theirs. And then I get a nice little note that says, I think this is all you need. So that's what I can tell you about it. I went through it with Teresa yesterday to make sure that I had the majority. And you're obviously going to learn a lot more when you have testimony and Janet come in and other people come in, but that's the overview.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions for Representative Bogart? Go ahead.
Thank you. I'm curious if you could mention a little bit more about what inspired you to do this and which groups you spoke with or which.
Well, I was asked to do it by the administration, but
Yeah.
myself, Teresa, Ray, Jubilee, Dan, we're all, well, were you here for the child? Yeah, you were already in here for childcare bill. Ann, we worked on the Act 76, and so as you may remember, Jessica and I were the ones who presented on the floor. So childcare has always been important. So they asked if I would present the amendments. I mean, there's small technical amendments, but it's still part of childcare. And since I'm not in this room anymore and don't participate in your glorious world, instead of dealing with bricks and mortar, I said, yes, I would love to have the opportunity to stay involved in this round.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
Anybody else have any other questions? Great.
Cool.
Thank you, James.
Thank
Appreciate it.
James.
To appropriations I go.
All right. Come back anytime.
Yeah,
Well, don't forget my birthday is next week and I would like,
yes, for there.
I want a trifle, but I know I'm not going to get one. So. See you guys.
Okay. You want to switch seats, Dan?
Yeah, you want me up there?
Yes.
Sitting on the list here. Awesome.
Yes, about now it's just so it doesn't seem like I'm walking out. You. That's
Totally fine. All right, thank you, everybody, for taking the time to listen to, I got 3 bills in order here that I put in this session for consideration. The first one is H 269, and it's an act relating to federal benefits of youth in the custody of the state. So basically, right now, Department of DCF gets the money from Social Security for youth in the custody of the state. It's about, I've seen reports anywhere from $800,000 to $1 million a year total. DCF uses this money to pay for their care. However, it's money that belongs to the youth in the custody of the state. So these are in foster care, children in foster care. And the idea is, with this bill, is to take that money and invest it in the child's name while they're in the custody of the state. Because quite often, when they turn 18 or exit care, they have no money. They have no ability to, kind of get their first apartment or get a car so they can get a job or whatever. So this is an opportunity to keep that money set aside, let it grow, and then give it back to the youth when they transition to adulthood, and just to have the ability of them to have the money. However, knowing myself when I was young, 18 years old, if you had given me, could be $20,000 over the course of a child's, growing up through foster care, or could be more. I wouldn't have much to show for it. So this bill says, look, how do we give it to them? It's their money, kind of more maybe in a structured setting, and really to think about how just giving someone like, here's $20,000 in cash, right? Good luck. But, think about how we could help them. Like I said, buy a car, go to school, put a down payment on a house. We, when we were working on the baby bonds, we heard from a young woman who had was working with Spectrum, who was getting money and kind of I'm trying to remember what they call it. It's well, anyways, they were giving her some money and
Cash
Direct-
transfer.
yes, thank you,
universal
Jubilee.
basic income, yeah.
And she was like, I bought a mattress because I never had my own bed. I bought some new shoes, and I was like, okay, that's the kind of thing that we could help these youth. So this basically also has a funding source. I worked and talked to Office of Child Advocate Matthew Bernstein, said that there's money available through the federal government that DCF could apply for that would kind of offset to help care for the youth. So the state would be made whole. They would have another ability to draw down some additional funds.
You know how much, Dan? Because I know that the SSI right now is being used to offset the cost of foster care.
Correct.
Do you know how much this is coming into the state that they're utilizing for the cost of the program?
So
Approximately.
Matthew Bernstein told me he thought it was around $800,000 a year. There's a Digger article that says it's around $1 million. So somewhere in between there, it's about 10% of the youth are eligible for this payment. So
I know we didn't fund baby bonds, but we passed legislation enabling.
there, it exists.
So wouldn't this sort of, I know it's not the same thing, but wouldn't it coincide because these kids are eligible for Medicaid?
Yeah, absolutely. And we could even use that structure. So you could even take these funds and invest it in baby bonds and use that existing structure to pay it back to them as they age out of the system.
I guess I wasn't thinking necessarily in addition to, but isn't it, I guess, a comparable argument about why we, aren't there comparable arguments about why to do baby bonds and then why to do this? It seems similar.
Yeah, it's totally the same. Think about
I realize this is a subset of that larger group.
Right.
Yeah.
any low income people that are transitioning to adulthood, money for college, money to start a business, money to put a down payment on a house.
Mhm.
Think about how that would help in generational wealth down the road for that individual. And so that's kind of what I was thinking about here. Instead of exiting individuals into homelessness even, this might be a way to help them get a start in life with an existing funding source and also figure out how to give it to them so that they would make hopefully some good choices. But if they want it, it's their money. If they want to buy a snowmobile.
You mentioned that you spoke with state official who thought that there was an opportunity for a federal grant that could offset the hole, if you will, created by this.
Yeah.
And I do like the idea of this. Why are they not applying for those funds now?
I'm not sure.
They will tell you it's the IT system.
Yeah, it could be that we might have trouble there, but according to the Office of Child Advocate, Matthew Bernstein, he's found a way that the state could draw down these funds.
And on your point about trying to find a mechanism to release over time or for
Yeah.
certain causes money, again, I think that's a wise approach. Do we know if there's any legal barriers to doing that since it is the youth's money and then we're encumbering it in some way?
Sure.
Or maybe because we are acting in locus parenti that we can put it in some sort of trust. Do you know the legal?
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. But this is a short form bill.
Yeah.
So the thought was that we could really flesh it out quite a bit more in terms of how that money, right now, the youth is saying that the money goes to the state. So
Yeah.
it's right now it's in state's money. So the state would have the opportunity to put it in the treasurer's office into an account and then pay it back to them over time. So it's state's money now.
Go ahead,
So
Brenda.
how would you, because like I heard Ray say rent, how would you put something in the bill to make sure they don't go buy a snowmobile?
Yeah. No, I think that would,
You got me on, that one got me, but I like the rent idea.
yeah,
So what would be in the bills? Would they have to like show like receipts from the
It's a-
landlord or?
it's a short form. So it would be up to the committee to really take some testimony and come up with whatever that structure looks like. It might be, even directly based on baby bonds, which we passed last year.
Would probably involve the treasurer's office.
I think that would be the best thing, is to talk about how would it be best for them to distribute these funds back to the individual. They definitely have the capacity to do it because they had the ability to do it with all the youth that are born onto Medicaid. So,
And I think the other thing is most likely because these youth are receiving SSI, that the state is acting as a representative payee.
yes. Yeah.
Because there's a requirement for a representative payee, in certain circumstances. So, Esme.
Cool, Bill. I appreciate the let it grow piece that you mentioned. I think that was it's
Yeah.
really smart, obviously. And that's one of the ideas with baby bonds, it's not, I don't know the exact mechanisms, like, is it just trying to accrue interest or is it actually being invested in like the stock market? And that's one question I have, are these funds that would be set aside in the treasurer's office, like, would they be invested in a different way than the rest of our state dollars, as we do in M&T or wherever we do? But yeah, I know, open to interpretation.
I think that would be a wonderful conversation to have.
Yeah.
And I hope that we consider taking this bill out.
Yeah.
That would be really interesting to kind of think about, like, how would they be invested in? How could we show youth about
Involved.
saving, teach them about
Exactly.
saving money and showing them how a small amount can grow over time
Right.
with interest versus, just depositing the money.
And connecting this back to, what we've been working on in this committee for weeks now, homelessness and the ability to have resources to invest in your own future in terms of housing. I mean, obviously that would be one of the things that would be on the list of, authorized expenditures, but so, okay, anybody else have any questions for Dan about this? Yeah, go ahead, Todd.
I like where you're going. I just don't like telling people how to spend their money. And not everybody's gonna make a bad choice.
Right.
Lord knows, I would probably have made a bad choice.
As I
But
always-
there are people out there that would make a good choice.
Mhm.
And that's my only comment.
Yeah, and I think that we could build that into the structure, like, if you, yeah, I mean, I think that is up for debate on how that money is paid back to the individual.
Are there gonna be fees attached? Because nothing happens in this world for free. Nothing happens.
We would have to figure that out and see, we would take, as Dan said, this is a short form bill. That just means that, okay, I'm putting the concept out there, and then if a committee decides to take it up, we would then, start having witnesses and start thinking about, how could this work, or how would this work, or how should it work? And so we would be filling in the blanks, essentially, if we decided to take this up. So,
Well, yeah, I'm concerned. I don't know what this baby bonds is. Would it be
Oh.
double dipping? Could they double dip?
well, that's
Yeah,
why it's not double dipping, but they would be eligible for
Right,
both.
see, that would be a problem.
There's no money for baby bonds.
Yeah.
It doesn't
There's no
exist.
money.
No,
It
it's,
doesn't exist.
it doesn't,
Doesn't exist.
the concept was approved, but no money was appropriated for it.
Okay, so there wouldn't be like 10,000 coming from here and 10,000, I'm just.
Not at this point. And Dan, can you refresh my memory on baby bonds? Did you have to be born into Medicaid?
Right, you have to be born on Medicaid.
On Medicaid, so, some of these kids wouldn't have been born on Medicaid, and, when you come into the foster care system, under certain circumstances, you're eligible for, SSI, so it would be a smaller subset, but,
And money will never be able to not come, there'll never be money in there, so that's somewhere down the line that.
I don't know, the
I would hope that
treasurer.
we fund baby bonds.
The treasurer
Right?
will,
That's what I'm
bring
saying,
it back.
so what happens then, when there's money there and money here? See,
So baby bonds puts a small amount of money into an
This
account
is-
when an individual is born on Dr. Dinosaur. And that money grows over time, and they get They have to live in Vermont to be able to claim it. They have to, because sometimes young children move with their families. They have to go if their family moves. They
Right.
can't stay here, but they have to be a resident of Vermont. And then when they reach a certain age, they can use the money for very specific things. They can use it to go to school. They can use it to put a down payment on a home or start a business.
Okay, so that's the baby bond.
That's baby bonds.
Yeah, and there's no
Dan-
money in that. And yeah, go ahead.
Can I just clarify that the
Yeah.
distinction between the baby bonds and what you're talking, what's in this bill is money that belongs to
Correct.
the individual already.
Yeah.
Whereas baby bonds is something that would be given to someone. So in a sense, it wouldn't even be double dipping if they would be, if they're eligible. One is their own money.
Sure.
The other one, they might be eligible to receive a benefit.
Right.
If we ever fund that. So they would be able to do both if we ever fund it.
Just like them
If they
getting.
qualified for the baby bonds.
Yeah.
Just want to put
Yeah, the
Yeah.
point is that this is the
their
person's own
own
money
Yeah.
that the state is using right now
Correct.
in an authorized way. I mean, it's not
Right.
illegal.
Kids on Medicaid or just foster? I'm
It's just
confused.
foster.
This is.
Okay, so,
How
yeah,
about?
exit the concept of baby bonds, just. take
Okay,
that
yeah, let's
concept,
get that out.
Yeah.
So foster kids, is it kids that have been adopted too?
If they are receiving SSI, okay, so not all foster, kids in foster care received SSI.
10%,
How many? 10?
10%.
So 10% of the kids are eligible, and that's usually based upon a disability. It can be based upon parent's disability. It's
The parent.
so death of a parent. There are reasons why somebody's eligible for SSI, and it's a smaller portion.
Mhm.
And the state uses that to reduce the cost of foster care. And it's an allowable use of the funding. But in the situation that we're talking about is that money is coming into the individual. It's, it's a benefit for the individual, federal benefit that the state matches. And in other systems, so not to complicate things, but in the developmental disability system, people need to use that for their room and board. So they, if they're living in what we call shared living, with a they have to use it for they have to use it for their room and board. They get to keep a portion of it for personal needs, but they have to use it. So this is similar to that. Although we're saying, these are children who are, starting out with a more difficult start because they've been in foster care. And so money that is theirs, should the state be using it to help offset their foster care or not? I mean, that's really the question. Should it be saved for them and invested? Or should it continue to be used by the Department for Children and Families to offset the cost of foster care? And so that's really the question. So, we'll make some decisions about bills that we're going to take up and.
So I know I'm jumping ahead, but where we get to see the room and board for post-secondary, that would come out of their own money.
Well, we'll wait till we get to that one, okay?
Okay.
All right,
Because I would think that would be what would happen.
okay. Anybody else have any other questions about this? Okay,
All right, thank you.
great.
All right.
Next.
So get up and go back. to my-
Yeah, I know you can.
Okay, so the next one I have down here, is,
We swear them in?
yeah, right.
Yeah, I know. Should we do introductions?
414 is an act relating to the Vermont Commission on Aging. So, in this committee, we have created the Age Strong Vermont Plan, which is a long-term plan for aging well. We just heard about it last week on the floor about the 1-year anniversary of its implementation and some of the highlights that have happened about how we're working collectively to make sure Vermont's the best place to grow old. What this bill does is kind of bring everybody together under a commission. New Hampshire, Maine, many other states have these Commission on Aging. It would basically work to implement the plan that we've created. It would kind of be a higher level view over state government. So, think about transportation, think about Dale, think about even DCF, where you have older Vermonters carrying kinship care, just like how do we have kind of a higher level overview of someone who's looking at all of the issues and all of the priorities that we set forth in Age Strong Vermont and try to tie them together and come up with best practices, look at what other states are doing, and just try to bring all of the agencies so they're not working in silos, so they're all working together. We met over the summer. There was a number of meetings through AARP and was by the Vermont Community Foundation to kind of flesh out some of the details on this and what it could look like here in Vermont. And so this is basically sets the framework for creating a Vermont Commission on Aging. We've modeled it on Vermont Commission on Women we looked at very closely. We looked at Vermont, the Vermont Commission on Children and Families that we passed out of here that has Matthew Bernstein as the Office of the Child Advocate. So just trying to figure out how we can implement the goals of Age Strong Vermont.
And part of it would seem to be, although seems to be made up a lot of state employees, whereas the other commissions that I'm familiar with are more independent.
Mhm.
Like the Commission on Women, the Human Rights Commission, they act sort of watchdog's not exactly the right word, but they're like, okay, trying to move forward policies and their mission through government, but they're not comprised of government.
Yeah, and I basically looked at what New Hampshire did and modeled this on New Hampshire's Commission on Aging. So, there's definitely some discussion, could be some committee discussion around who would serve on the commission and what would be their roles and responsibility.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, go ahead, Doug.
Well, I know you have some illustrious co-sponsors, so you're off to a good start. No, the question, there's a lot of conversation in Vermont about our aging population. There has been for several years, and the trajectory is we're getting older.
Mm-hmm.
Why has this not been an idea or a concept that's gained traction to now?
We started with what was the original bill? I'm trying to remember the name of it. It was we put together a study committee and we brought together everybody, legislators, people from different agencies, people from nonprofits that provide services to older Vermonters, and we created the Age Strong Vermont plan. That plan has been implemented and it's been going for a year. And
we do have,
I think this is kind of the natural succession of how, we can kind of work collectively to address the issues that affect older Vermonters.
So we have an Older Vermonters Act.
That's it.
That's right. It was took me a second to pull it back out, Dan. Dan and I were kind of the leads on the creation of the Older Vermonters Act, which was painful getting through because it was during the first vestiges of COVID and everything went remote, and we were we were how we're hearing on the floor, oh, this is going to be continued. Well, we were continued forever, it seemed like, and we finally I kind of made a joke of it when I did my floor report because we had been on the calendar so many days. It was, it was in different parts of the calendar. So the Older Vermonters Act actually does lay out the groundwork for where we want to move as a state. And the result of that was, just as Dan was just saying, that planning process and the creation of the Age Strong Vermont plan. And they're actually, like I said at the luncheon the other day, I was really happy to see that they have identified funds somehow, I'm not sure from where, internally to have a project manager who is responsible for ensuring implementation of the plan. Part of this, which you didn't really talk about, Dan, part of this is in reaction to the fact that we lost Cove, the Coalition of Vermont Elders, although they dropped the name, but it was just called Cove. And so there's no advocacy organization in the state right now dealing only with older Vermonter issues. And so then people got together, as Dan said, over the summer. I participated in a couple of the meetings to say, what's next? You know, how do we continue to highlight and focus on the issues and the talents and the challenges and all of the above for older Vermonters, and feeling like there was a need for something to maintain that focus and serve an advocacy role, really. That's why I'm a little hesitant about the makeup of the group, because if they were really to serve as an advocacy role, you know, people in state government aren't going to be able to do that free from their jobs. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So kind of thinking back about what we did with childcare and kind of we built in that, I knew that more monitoring and accountability into the bill. I wonder why we wouldn't consider having this as part of the Older Vermonters Act.
An amendment to it.
And because it's kind of like to continue the work, right?
Yeah.
Like, what is best practice? How do we make sure that we're accountable for the work that we set out to do? And then it becomes a whole package, and it's a living thing, that it's not this separate kind of group that's working on it, but it's part of the overall plan of how we're thinking about
Absolutely.
aging in Vermont.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's an excellent observation and recommendation. Yeah. Because I think the concept is to try to not replace, redo, or do something different than what's in the Age Vermont plan. It's to try to be sort of like okay, we got our eyes on you. Are you really doing this? You know?
It's like oversight, accountability, but also like advancing.
Yeah.
What's next? Like really identifying, like, what are best practices? What should be our overarching goal? Strategic planning for, you know, the next 5 years. That should all be, like, I would see a group like this as being a part of that Older Vermonters package, that they continue the work given our demographics. It's a, you know, priority. And to me, it just makes sense to have it all encompassing.
And coming to the legislature with, you know, really fleshed out programs that, you know, like, okay, we have a hole here, and this is an opportunity for us to fix that. And implementing the Age Strong Vermont plan, this is how you could help these individuals, whatever part of living in Vermont it is. Or aging in Vermont is probably.
So Dan, what would you say to people, like, and just like hear the department say, well, we have the Dale Advisory Board.
Yeah. This is above Dale. This would Department of Transportation. This would look at, you know, all parts of state government and outside of even state government, looking at, like, how do we make sure there's ongoing conversations and connections between the groups that are delivering many of these services, whether it's senior centers. How do we, you know, look at how are they best being implemented or delivering services in the communities around companionship and congregate meals and, you know, everything that's, you know, how do we make everybody work together?
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Anybody else have any additional questions for Dan? Okay.
One more. Okay.
Dan's on.
Number 3. Okay. So H120 is establishing and design of a long-term care trust. This is not my idea. This has been in this building since the 80s. Could you imagine if we had money, for instance, the $42 million we had to put into nursing homes that we could use for home and community-based providers to help people age in their communities? What this bill does is it says, we're going to create a long-term care trust, and we all have access to nursing homes to pay for them, whether or not we have any money or not. It basically creates a way to build money over time so that we're not constantly having to bail out these care providers. I just think about how that money that we spent could be better invested in making sure people have access to home health or Meals on Wheels or whatever it takes. If we all had money instead of showing up to nursing homes with no money and looking at the Medicaid reimbursement rate, their ability to pay staff, their ability to, meet the individual's care in that institutional setting. So my thought was just to, everybody pays in and everybody has access to care. Because right now, we just got a call yesterday from a nursing home that is really struggling. And it just doesn't work. The money doesn't work because Medicaid reimbursement rates for many of the individuals that show up in nursing homes is not enough to pay staff, to keep the lights on, to heat the buildings, to pay for food. And they have to figure out how to make it work through individuals' private pay or going after their estates after they pass. And so the idea here is that we just kind of prop up this portion of care so that we're not constantly having to bail them out.
I can guess why it hasn't passed, because it's a tax.
It is a tax. It would be a tax.
That would be why it hasn't passed. Esme?
That was my exact question. So, so when you say everybody chips in, so what would be the
It would be a
mechanism?
payroll tax.
Oh, payroll, okay,
Sure.
or,
We do for
Childcare.
yes.
Okay, childcare.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
If that's not in some folks' appetite, I'm curious what.
Yeah.
Are there other
We just-
alternatives for
we
funding
just-
mechanisms?
We
that-
just spent 40
I know.
taxpayer dollars
Yeah,
on nursing
sure.
homes. You already are
Yeah.
paying it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we're not paying it smartly, exactly, or in the most
You already
effective way.
are.
But has payroll tax been the only idea that's been
You know,
floated in the past? Or-
that's originally, I guess this passed the House, but not the Senate back in the 80s. And
Okay.
it was set up as a payroll tax.
Yeah,
The money has to come from somewhere, whether we can see it and have a dedicated source of funds, or if we're just trying to make it work out of general funds, which we're all paying for anyways.
Well, it says long-term care. It's not required to be paid to nursing homes.
No, long-term care.
It can be
definitely.
your home
You
services.
wouldn't want
Yeah.
it to be just.
Yeah, right.
With the house.
But there are individuals that need that level.
Just to be
Absolutely.
clear, it wouldn't negate what we pay out of Medicaid, because the
Correct.
income levels in here, that is still,
You would
these
still
are
have that
above- these are
money.
people who are above Medicaid eligible.
That's just an example of.
So
what
Medicaid
ours
would still be
is.
paying, yeah. Medicaid would still be paying, but these would
Right,
be.
but this would
be additional.
Go up on top of that so that
Yeah,
they're not having to struggle.
it is in essence a required form of long-term care insurance.
Mm.
That has become unaffordable for a lot of people
Mhm.
now, and they are the commercial insurers are like ratcheting down. It's like, it's almost impossible to get the money out of them now, I look at this as a publicly sponsored long-term care insurance,
Yeah.
What it
essentially.
would be.
Yeah.
Any other states do this already?
It's a good question. I don't know. I don't know.
And the funds would only be available to be drawn down by individuals who make application. The funds, it wouldn't be another source for nursing home emergency.
No, it would go to the individuals so they could pay for their care.
Because they'd be the ones who are paying in.
Correct.
Yeah. So some administrative
Yeah.
structure to support that.
I'll add maybe that one benefit of having this version of a long-term care insurance model is that instead of having an outside manager out there's no profit incentive. So they don't need to accrue more to keep themselves
point.
running like other insurance companies. This
Yeah.
is like our own, like, it goes strictly back into the pockets of Vermonters, just
Mhm.
compared to the other versions that just leave the state.
So it's just a thought, I think that we need to be having conversations around how we pay for long-term care, whether it's in institutions or in people's homes, because we have an aging population and it's just going to continue, the needs are going to continue to grow.
And this would be something that a commission might be looking at as a
Absolutely.
recommendation to the legislature, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
And I actually took this bill from what has been being proposed over many years.
Representative Yakavoni as a co-sponsor here has
Correct.
put this in many
Mhm.
times.
And when he didn't run for reelection, I told him I'd keep it going.
Oh.
And now he's back, so he's back on it with me. Yep.
They found that the state of Washington has a similar.
And Alaska, Colorado, Hawaii, Oregon, Illinois, Michigan, Minnesota, New York, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and Utah are considering implementing.
Yeah.
Of their states. So a lot of states are looking at it. So the one in Washington is maximum lifetime benefit of 36,500 adjusted annually for inflation.
It's like,
It's nothing.
it's like.
That's not a lot. One day of care.
Those states bailing out their.
But I mean, that would, like, you're thinking about nursing home, but at different levels of care, it
Yeah.
could help subsidize. I
It could
mean,
delay your entrance
Right,
into
into a
long-term
nursing
care.
home.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Not everybody's gonna use it.
Exactly.
So they would
Yeah.
grow.
Could be 72 or something.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, no, because they
Oh,
got.
maximum. that's
Yeah.
right.
yeah. Well, it's good to know, one, that there's a state out there already trying it and that others
California
are
has
thinking about it.
Task force. Looking at it.
I mean, I think that the issue of the cost of long-term care is really critical because one, we know, the statistics on our state, but we also know that the cost of long-term care is exorbitant, honestly, for people and the people who have the resources to do so, frankly, hide their money. And they still figure out how to end up having the state pay for it. So, and then, we have people who, truly don't have access to any other resources. And so as you said, Dan, this is costing the state already. And it's is there a way to actually reduce the cost to the state by people thinking about, essentially saving, this is a forced savings plan, for long-term care. And, there would have to obviously be provisions for if you left the state, whatever. I mean, if it's a tax, then it's not right. If it's a tax, it's not something that, it's not really a savings plan per se, because
Sure.
savings plan, you get to take.
It would be yours.
Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, these are all details that would have to be taken up in committee and just try to figure out how to best implement something like this. It just is, I just want to have those conversations around how we pay for long-term care for older Vermonters.
I really totally welcome it. I've just been through that.
Yeah.
So watching it.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Friend of my father's, he bought nursing home insurance. And it's expensive. It only covers 1 year.
yeah,
It's like, it's crazy, it's this policy.
yeah. It's crazy
I
expensive.
really thought it would cover the whole term, like, no, only 1 year.
Yeah. Yeah, they're ratcheting, and even though if you bought it and you were guaranteed these certain benefits, they changed that, because the cost of long-term care is, increasing. And so they decrease the benefit in order to do that. So yeah, when it first came out, everything was like, all sunny and roses and everybody should get this. And it was really reasonable when it first came out. And now the cost of long-term care insurance is pretty high, and the benefit isn't what is going to really help you for any length of time if you have an extended illness or anything like that. Yeah. Yeah. Kind of another argument for socialized medicine and long-term care.
Even if we don't get to that point, just a demonstration of a program that could work to reduce those costs.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't tempt me.
All right, Dan, thank you
Right.
so much.
Thanks so much for taking the time to.
Yeah, thanks for putting this stuff out there. Appreciate it. Okay, so we have a few minutes before Katie comes to review the statute on the Human Services Board. And then we're going to, while she's here, we're going to look at the opioid abatement special fund. And then do Jubilee. So, and we have birthday cake. Left over from yesterday because we didn't get to have it. I came back and everybody had already left, so we can do that maybe just before lunch. So, all right, why don't we take a quick break, while we're waiting for Katie? Thank you, Lori.